Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is Victor Shi. It is Thursday, April 27th. And today we're going to do a deep dive into Wisconsin because just a few weeks ago, the nation has had its eyes on Wisconsin's Supreme Court election. Many would have thought that a Democrat would never have been able to win because Democrats typically don't invest in or pay as much attention to Supreme Court and judicial nominations and races than Republicans. But while that may have once been the case just a few weeks ago, Janet Protasiewicz not only won, but she swept the field. She showed the entire nation that even in a state like Wisconsin, Democrats can win against Republicans. So the question I have today is, what are the biggest lessons we can take away from Wisconsin, and how can we apply those lessons as we head into 2024? And luckily, I am joined by someone who I look up to and who inspires me every day. He is Ben Wikler, the chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party. Ben, it's so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you so much, Victor. It's great to be with you, and this is my favorite topic. So, conversation.
Yes, we have a lot to talk about. So, as I mentioned, this remarkable result that we saw in Wisconsin a few weeks back, I want to add that this wasn't the first time we saw Wisconsin defy political expectations. We saw it in 2020, we saw it again in 2022, and with the midterm elections, and of course, just a few weeks ago. So, I'm wondering, as the chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party, what you and Wisconsin Democrats have done that has allowed you to basically turn a traditionally red state, or at least gerrymandered state, into a blue state.
So I will, I'll speak to the question. I want to also say, underlying this, Wisconsin is a 50-50 state. It is purple, purple, purple. So we're the only state where 4 of the last 6 presidential races comes down to less than 1 percentage point. The 2000 race, we were the second closest state. 2004, we were the closest state in the country, and third closest in 2016 and 2020. So we're sort of on a knife's edge. And within that, we have a Republican Party that took control in 2010 and then set about rigging everything, smashing unions, smashing the power of students to organize, basically making it impossible to do door-to-door voter registration through the attacks on voter registration systems. We're the second hardest state to register to vote in the country. Policy after policy tried to angle us towards becoming a red state, the way that they've made Ohio and Iowa so hard for Democrats to win. And in 2016, you saw that play out at the presidential level with Donald Trump. Since then, we've been fighting back inch by inch. And so a lot of these wins are very, very narrow. This spring was an exception to that. And I think in a way, this spring was a race where it was the only thing happening in the country. We were less subject to national forces in a certain sense. And you saw the full flourishing of our operation and the collapse on the other side. And by our, I want to emphasize, I mean the whole progressive movement. So there are grassroots and independent organizations doing amazing work. Project 72 did this massive student organizing program with more than 100 staff all across Wisconsin. Just absolutely stunning operation. The Conservation Voters, the Voces de la Frontera, all these different organizations doing amazing work. And I could spend this whole show listing them all off. And then we have the party. And at the party, our strategy, like a lot of our partners on the independent side, has been year-round organizing. So we don't stop after the election's over, even though now we've gotten through 2 blockbuster elections in 6 months. We're still organizing. I was on a call with 90 volunteers last night, both sharing appreciation for what they just did, but also talking about the road forward through 2024. We have a neighbor-to-neighbor organizing system built on the Obama model, where we recruit volunteer leaders in neighborhoods through our professional organizing staff that are on year-round. They focus on building teams led by volunteers to talk to people in their own communities, and to do that not just in the few months before Election Day and in November of an even-numbered year, but year over year. And we work across every community, across race and ethnicity, generation, gender, geography. You have to really show up everywhere all the time. And that's, if we have secret sauce, that's what it is.
You mentioned the youth vote turnout operation. I want to get into that later, but I want to ask you about one of the things that fascinated me about this election, which is we often hear Democratic pundits say, oh, well, Americans want to hear candidates talk about kitchen table issues like gas prices or wages, but a lot of the issues that at least Wisconsin focused on with this latest Supreme Court election was framed around 2 key issues, I think: abortion access and democracy. I'm wondering, why did those issues resonate, and do you think that will stick going forward?
So abortion was the #1 issue in this race, hands down. Republicans wanted it to be crime. And to be clear, Janet Protasiewicz addressed public safety head on and talked about her values and how much she cares about public safety, had people who had been victims of crime who she had stood up for as a judge. She'd given a fair hearing to their experience. So she kind of took that issue off the table, and at the same time, from her first ad through the final stretch, really was foot forward on reproductive freedom as a core personal value for her, making clear that even though her opponent, Dan Kelly, was ready to do the bidding of the ultra right-wing anti-abortion, anti-reproductive freedom special interests, she would give a fair hearing to whatever case came before her, and that her own values were that abortion is a decision that should be made by the person who's actually pregnant, not by a politician. So that issue, I think, mobilized people, and it also persuaded people. We have research that showed that of people who voted, most of them voted for her, not against Dan Kelly, as terrible as he was. Mm-hmm. And abortion was the biggest reason why they voted for her. And that was true in every region of the state. It was the number one issue for men as well as for women, although there was it was a much bigger issue for women. It was also a potent issue with men across Wisconsin. And a huge share of Wisconsinites felt very strongly that Wisconsin's pre-Civil War abortion ban was horrible and a disaster and something that they were against. So knowing that it would come before the Supreme Court and that she would rule on whether this pre-Civil War abortion ban should actually be enforceable now was something that people really, really wanted. Now, when you look at 2024, the question really before us will be whether we should have a national abortion ban. Yeah. And that means the fights for the presidency and for the House majority and for the Senate majority are all going to connect so deeply to this issue. If you take a step back, there's a way of thinking about how to put this into a broader message context. So sometimes people say it's not what the candidates say about the issues, it's what the issues say about the candidates. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the core thing I think that we should argue truly is that Democrats are waking up every day trying to make our country more free, more just, more fair, give everybody a fair shot. Democrats want to not have things like abortion bans on the table. We want to be focused on creating opportunity, jobs for everybody, supporting our great schools, making sure we rebuild the union movement. Those are things that the vast majority of Americans agree on. And it's Republican extremists who are trying to use attacks on our freedom to incite the far-right base, attacks on democracy, attacks on abortion freedoms, attacks on trans kids. All those things are the Republicans' attempts to make us less free, in order to also distract everybody from the economic issues where, frankly, Republicans lose hands down. And so you can actually do a combination of, prioritizing kitchen table issues and being absolutely resolute, brick wall against Republican attacks on freedom. Those things fit together because they show that Democrats actually get it, have the common sense of understanding what people want, and that Republicans are in the MAGA extreme edges of the fever swamp. That worked in our governor's race last year. It worked in the Supreme Court race just now. I think it's a recipe for 2024 as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to ask you, what do you think Republicans' end goal is with this? Do they not realize that what they're doing with things like reproductive rights, democracy, these issues are so popular among the majority of American voters, gun reform, but Republicans, one, aren't doing anything about it, and they're actually trying to strip away those things. What are they trying to do here, and why do you think I guess people still vote for that? Is there something that they're seeing that we're not seeing? What is going on there, do you think?
Well, I think that these issues connect because if you want to rip away freedom and safety from the majority of the public, you need to break the democracy to make sure that the public can't do something about it.
Right.
So there is an intrinsic connection there. A second thing is Republicans really have become captured by the most extreme fringe of their donor base and their activist base. And that's something that, ironically, Republicans often charge Democrats with.
Right.
If you look at the GOP, the biggest Republican donor in the country, Richard and Liz Uihlein, they were the biggest funders of Stop the Steal. They were massive funders of these hideous anti-abortion ads that were all over the place in Wisconsin in the Supreme Court race just now. They are the people that Republicans need to please in order to have a shot. And so Republicans are kind of kissing the ring of people who are embracing the most hideous and toxic far-right MAGA ideology. And they don't have the political independence to be able to say, no, this has gone too far. So part of it is I think they kind of can't help themselves. They've tied themselves to the mast of a ship that's sailing off the far right edge of the world and into political oblivion. That said, I think there is something deeper, which is this authoritarian impulse. There was a speech that Tucker Carlson gave this last weekend that I thought was really telling, where he framed the big choice in the world as between, he described it as order and discipline versus chaos, and that was good versus evil. And nowhere in that was freedom or
Yeah.
opportunity or
Yeah.
liberty. And it's like basically a kind of neo-fascist vision about what is good. And there's this impulse to control and to have reinforced power for those at the very top who maybe look a certain way and who want to and have a certain gender identity and want to exert control over everybody else, and the sense of like the authoritarian order, the structure that they want to maintain. And if you so many of the far right's policies flow from that vision about who should have control and power, as opposed to the idea of freedom and liberty for everybody, and building a society built on freedom and justice and an equal shot, a fair shot for everyone in America. In a way, I think that's always been the struggle in American politics. The two big sides in the long-term fight. And so, for people who believe in freedom, democracy, liberty, equality, and opportunity, I think the urgency of this political moment is pretty clear.
I think that word control is so important. I mean, that's kind of, they have, I think, a facade of connection, but really kind of deep down inside, it seems like they're controlling people and they're trying to make lives worse. But I guess it's trying to convey that to the other side that's going to be challenging. But I want to get into the other thing that really propelled Janet Protasiewicz to victory a couple weeks ago, which, like we mentioned earlier, was young voters. And I'm with Voters of Tomorrow, which I know you met with Jack and Raghav, who I am huge fans of. We work together every day, and they're amazing. But having dedicated so much of the past couple of years to reaching young people, I think, just like you mentioned, you all provided the gold standard for a youth voter turnout operation. Can you share with our audience what the operation looked like and what you think Democrats can adopt going forward in 2024?
Sure. So I'll start with what I understand from Project 72, which built on continuing work by Next Gen, by Rise, by Voters of Tomorrow, a lot of different organizations. Project 72 hired more than 100 students across the state of Wisconsin. They did dorm storming, I think they knocked on 50,000 doors in college dorms across the state of Wisconsin, but also throwing parties, having events, having people go to campus bars and different places. They had in women's bathrooms across campuses in Wisconsin, "My body, my choice" was written on signs on walls. There was a ton of meeting people where they were, which I think is the hallmark of all good organizing.
Yes.
At the Democratic Party, we've had a year-round youth organizing program since the summer I was elected chair in 2019. And we have an amazing Maggie leads our youth organizing operation now and runs the College Democrats of Wisconsin. And her predecessor, Brianna Coworth, went over to Project 72, joined Teddy Landis, who's a former organizer for us. I think one way I think all organizations should see themselves is both as places that do great work, but also places that help support and lift up great leaders who can go on to do work in other organizations. And there's, I think, a wonderful degree of investment in youth organizing across the progressive movement, centrally led by young people themselves, taking, self-organizing and then going out and asking for resources and support to expand that work. The key thing for me is you've got to start with the creativity of young people who actually do the leading themselves, figuring out, where are the places where people communicate? Who are the trusted messengers? What are the messages that actually resonate? As opposed to assuming that you can kind of, copy something that is working for retirees or baby boomers or, mid-career parents, and then just transplant that to a group of folks in a different age group. And the thing I hope for the whole country is that folks do, as we were doing in Wisconsin, a year-round program that ramps up this spring, that involves training, professional development, testing things, trying out different stuff. Don't be afraid to fail. Engage in local races in order to ladder up to the big national races and Senate and House races. Like, this stuff works when you try a ton of stuff and then keep building on the things that work the best, like relational organizing.
Yeah.
And it's the worst when you suddenly realize, right before an election, holy smokes, what about the young people? And then try to, cram a bunch of like TV ads into a digital frame to show people that don't actually resonate.
That's the traditional model, but it seems like, it's so important. Like you said, this investment and this engagement has to come not just during election years, but year round during non-election years. These are things that should happen constantly because, like you said, doing it 2 weeks before an election just probably won't work in terms of getting young people out there to vote. But I have one final question to you, which is, I think a lot of people watching out there might feel the world is terrible and horrible. And while there are many things that are terrible and horrible, we want to end on a positive, empowering note. So my final question to you is, I mean, what do you think is the most important thing those listening can do between now and election day in 2024?
So I think the biggest thing is to find people, states, organizations that you believe in and figure out how you can support them, not just in the final stretch, but become a monthly donor, become a volunteer for people that are doing organizing now. Maybe it's local candidates for local races. Maybe you want to help with the governor's race in Kentucky or Virginia House of Delegates races. Or maybe it's people who've just announced that they're running for Congress in 2024 or for Senate, let's say, in Arizona, and you want to help them to support their race all the way through. My experience in life is that we grow to love more deeply the things that we care for and work for more. And so it's not just that you fall in love and then you're off to the races. It's actually that putting in the work helps to build that deep connection. Yeah. And I think the same thing is true of democracy. So find a place that honors your time and uses your resources and your energy and your talent well, but then put yourself into it and block off time in your calendar to make it a regular practice. There are amazing grassroots organizations in every corner of the country. Every state has a Democratic Party. There are candidates that have started their campaigns now, and those are lonely processes for such a long time. Mm-hmm. If you're a young person, look for a chance to volunteer, intern. My hope is that everyone will pay their interns.
Yes.
But if there aren't paid internships, if you can do an hour a week to volunteer, that can then lead to a world where there are resources to be able to do a paid internship. Yeah. Find those opportunities to connect, or even if all you're doing is retweeting on a regular basis, it's astonishing how much you can build relationships just by connecting and amplifying great work online. Find those ways to plug in and do it not with the view of, it's not worth it unless we win, but rather with the view that we build democracy by doing it. Democracy is a practice. It is a way of life, and it's going to take all of us to save it.
I mentioned this on the show yesterday because we had Larry Sabato on, but my AP government teacher used to have this amazing saying, which is civics should be a lifestyle. And so we should make this a lifestyle and habit that we all adopt. And I know you are paving the way and showing us how to do that. And I thank you for all of your work and for joining me this morning. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Victor. And thanks to all the voters of tomorrow, an amazing group of people.
Of course. Thanks so much. Well, Ben is always so good, and you heard him just kind of lay out what Wisconsin was able to do in 2020, when 2022, and the last Wisconsin Supreme Court election, and it's really a model that I think so many Democratic parties across the state of Wisconsin, and also the National Democratic Party, really needs to adopt. I mean, this is something that I think works, just constant investment, really making sure that we turn out the vote, we get young people organized, we get people organized, and we just keep our heads down and do the work necessary. That's what's going to win elections. Just one county, one conversation, one vote at a time. And I think Wisconsin is just kind of really showing the country what a kind of the gold standard for organizing is and winning is. So thank you to Ben Wikler for joining us. And hopefully you all learned something. Like you said at the end, find an organization. Your state probably has a Democratic Party to tap into that. Volunteer on a campaign. Spend an hour, half an hour of your day. Text banking, phone banking, that really builds up. And if everyone can do that, imagine just how powerful that can be for 2024. The organizing starts now, and it's not going to end before Election Day 2024. So I know we all have our work ahead of us. And with this 2024 race up and running, we will definitely be sending you resources. I'll be inserting any websites, any organizations that you can plug into, and any opportunities that I hear of, because I think all of us, kind of the work that we do, like I said, I think earlier this week, goes beyond just this show. I want the show not only to be one of education, but one of empowerment and hopefully mobilizing and really activating you and your listeners and your friends into politics, and make it a little bit more understandable, accessible, and kind of demystify kind of the myths and all the terrible about politics, and really focus on how we can make a difference and why we should make a difference and how we can do that. So that's my goal, and I know we'll be doing that going forward. Just a couple of things before I end the show today. The first is, today is day 2 of Egan Carroll taking the stand. Yesterday was such a gut-wrenching moment. We're not allowed allowed to hear or see the what happened inside the courtroom, but a lot of court reporters were saying, what E. Jean Carroll said, and it's just heartbreaking to hear what she's had to go through during this entire process. Her first line when she took the stand was, "I am here because Donald Trump raped me." And then as the day went on, she described the experience of being basically sexually assaulted in the department store, and how it's affected her life. She said basically that her life has been really kind of destroyed. Her career has been destroyed. People have been throwing around so much vitriol and hatred toward her. And then, but she's also buoyed up by the amount of support that she gets. So I think the most important thing we can all can do is not only to follow this case, but also just to show E. Jean Carroll our support. She's someone who is really showing us what bravery and courage looks like. And I know she's not going to back down. She's going to finish up her testimony, and then the Trump lawyers are going to cross-examine her. They're going to try to tear her case down. But I know she will keep fighting because she's strong, she's courageous, and I stand with her. I know we all stand with her too. One other thing I want to get into is what happened in Montana yesterday. Basically, Zoe Zephyr is a transgender state representative. She stood up against this anti-transgender bill and basically turned on her mic and started speaking out. And Republicans have voted to ban the state representative Zoe Zephyr from speaking up right now, and she is now joining the latest, Tennessee 3. She is out there. She's now silenced. This is, again, fascism in broad daylight. Republicans are silencing people simply because they're fighting for things like gun reform, fighting for things like transgender rights. These are the things that Republicans are silencing people on. I think it's very telling what their fear is. They don't want gun reform. They don't want people to stand up against LGBTQ plus attacks and transgender attacks. This is what's happening within the Republican Party, and all of us should not view what happened in Montana yesterday, what happened in Tennessee just a couple of weeks ago, as one-off events. This is a part of a broader pattern and a broader movement to really push fascism into the American electorate, because they know that they can't win with transgender folks. They can't win with young people turning out. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to silence us. They're trying to suppress us. That is their kind of modus operandi throughout this whole entire thing. They're not trying to make this into a more inclusive democracy. They're trying to tear those people down, silence them, also that they can stay in power. But it's up to all of us to really understand what's going on right here, not to mince words about it, to really call out for what it is, which is a push for fascism. And I think young people are really paying attention. We have to make sure that we pay attention and we respond at the ballot box in 2024 to make sure that we make them pay the price for it. Otherwise, they will never learn. And so what happened yesterday in Montana, I think, was very concerning. Just happens to kind of follow the same trajectory of Tennessee. And I am afraid that it's not going to end here. I mean, we're going to see this continue in the months to come before 2024, but we all have to pay attention to what's happening, because this should be concerning and alarming to everyone out there. So I know we will continue following these cases, and to Zoe Zephyr, we stand with you. We are going to fight for you and make sure that your voice, even though they try to silence you, is not silenced. That's all the news I have for today. Tomorrow is Friday. This week has felt so long, starting with Monday, Tucker Carlson getting fired, the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, Joe Biden running for president. Tomorrow we'll do a weekly recap with my friend Juanita Tolliver, who will join me at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on youtube.com/Politicon. You do not want to miss that. We'll be back tomorrow, and it'll be a great episode with my friend Juanita, who really does a lot to shed light on the issues that matter. So don't miss that. I thank all of you for watching this episode with Ben Wikler, and hope you will tune in tomorrow, right again at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on youtube.com/Politicon. And I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Thursday.